Sweet.
Yeah, I downloaded the Unreal 5 thing in the demo scene.
Oh, 100 gigabytes.
Yeah. I downloaded it yesterday at work and like pulled it up and was like, okay, this is great. This is it. It was doing it. You pulled up the visualization of the nanite polygons, and you could see the various levels of like it's breaking geometry apart and LODing individual polys. It's crazy. So insane. I'm very much more stoked to get into it now, having gone over it for, just looking at it for 15 minutes with my buddies at work. It was like, wow.
Yeah,
that's so wild.
And did you see the blueprints part? The blueprints, they have like a whole synthesis and audio engine thing going on in there.
Yeah, that breakdown, I thought that was so fascinating. I was like, oh, this is super cool. I can't wait to like play with this part of Unreal. Just like having like basically like audio pockets you can create.
Yeah.
Alright, hear me. Todd is here. Alright.
I think can I hear you? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, I can't hear the music.
No, you won't be able to hear the music. You can hear me though, right?
I can't hear you, Dave.
Alright, hold on. How about now? Can you hear me now? Check 1 2. Hey, can you hear me? Oh, weird. My microphone was muted.
Hearing like music playing.
I don't
There
know
you
how
are.
my microphone muted for you. That was really weird. I was talking to you the whole time. Oh well.
Are you hearing music playing?
You shouldn't hear music. Can you hear me right now?
Yeah,
I'm hearing like there's like an echo.
There's an echo playing right now?
Wait.
Oh,
you know what? Because I have the YouTube on.
Oh.
That would be why.
That's
there it is.
funny.
Cool.
So y'all are good. You can hear me.
All good.
Say something
Yep.
more? Okay. Okay, cool. We are good. We're getting ready to go here. Let's see who we got. We got Jeremy, Todd, fried pickles, as we say sometimes. Jeff is here as well. All right. Cool. I think we're ready to go if y'all are ready, and let's kick this thing off. Here we go.
I'm going to start this whole thing off with 3 bold words. Houdini is easy. I am here to tell you that you are in the right place. Stay tuned. Do some particle simulations, some fluid simulations, just all the simulations. Let's just run this again. For all of you who are like me, who love computers and graphics and animation, you got this! An introduction to Houdini for motion designers and Cinema 4D artists looking to expand their skills. My apologies for the lame recording. I'm making this up as I go. You really do need to know what this stuff is to do the cool things. Sooner or later, your brain is going to start making connections. You came, you conquered, you saw. And congratulations for making it this far. Why didn't I know this existed? Cheers. I'm proud of you, and I'm a little bit emotional now, I'm not gonna lie. Stop being afraid of Houdini! Without further ado, let's let the learning begin.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to a Mograph special on Stop Being Afraid of Houdini. I'm Dave, and joining us tonight on this special is Mark Fancher and one of the Stop Being Afraid of Houdini students, Alex Liou.
What's up?
And we are going to be discussing the class and discussing Houdini tonight. As you saw the promo there, if you haven't seen the promo before, it's It turned out great thanks to your amazing visuals that you built for the course. The Stop Being Afraid of Houdini course came out a year ago, January, right before the pandemic started. And Mark, you put in a ridiculous amount of time into it, and it's been extremely successful. And then you decided, hey, 18.5 is out, let's update it. So you essentially just redid the entire thing, walked through your own course as a student. So tell us about that process. How fun was that, redoing the entire 40-hour course? Almost.
It was a grind. It was a grind. I got to kind of experience it from the opposite end, because obviously when you make the course, you're like completely burnt out. When you first make it, you're like, okay, I'm not looking at this for a while. I'm going to answer questions. I'm going to interact with people. I'm going to hang out with my family, things like that. And then, waiting several months, going through and obviously making sure that things are fixed and they're all working all along the way. But then to actually like revisit it and fully like give yourself the full treatment all the way from top to bottom, the entire course, every single moment of every lesson, following along on the computer. It was quite a thing that I have put several hundred people through at this point, I feel like. So it's crazy, but yeah, it was kind of an interesting experience to see it from that end, and found a bunch of ways to improve some of the lessons. Obviously update a lot of the lessons, some lessons needed like full on, just this needs to be redone. Other lessons were just dubbed. Some areas just needed a little, some nodes changed. So we just wanted to change like one or two things. So yeah, it's been a long process. Obviously 18.5 came out a little while ago at this point, but yeah. I mean, it is quite an undertaking to manage and maintain 40 hours worth of material.
We can't guarantee
it's super rewarding.
It will be that meticulously updated all the time. Hopefully these interface changes are kind of settled in at this point. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's going to be like a major interface change every 0.5 update, because it would be really hard to keep up with that, but I'm looking forward to part 2. Now that you're done with that, I mean, you can start on the next course. You're not burnt out at all, right?
No, I mean, I need a little bit. I need little breaks here and there, but we'll see. Yeah, I think I've been kicking around some ideas, trying to figure out what form it might take. But I would like to get back to trying to make some more content at some point.
And you're all this time you spent on this is not a different course. This is the same course. And if you already had the old course, you get the new course. And it's not like it's updating the version that you had. It comes up on your account as a separate 18.5 course. I think it's important to note that if you are already in the middle of the first version of the course, it's not like you have to finish the course and go take the other one. This is like, if you're in 18.5 and you are noticing some of those little differences, this is a good time. If you're in the middle, just switch over, because the interface and everything is going to match. And then you can see, because we've updated it within the course, you can see what's new and what's updated. So you'll be able to tell if it's something you've taken or not. So you get to keep the old one. If you still want to have that old content and need to go back and reference something, you can, or you can just move on to this one. And then people who buy the course at this point moving forward, they get just that 18.5 version. So just thought I'd put that out there. A couple people were a little confused about that, and just wanted to make sure everyone knew. We also wanted to we don't have everything, I guess, squared away exactly on what this is going to be, but we talked about this on the Mograph podcast the other day, but there is going to be a scholarship that we're going to do. So if you don't have this class and you're thinking about it, we haven't figured out the criteria exactly how it's going to be awarded, but we're going to award 3 scholarships. Over the next month, we'll have more details on that. But there is a doctor or surgeon, very, very high up there, specialist, and he uses Cinema 4D to create animations for some of the other doctors he's training. And in the process, he started listening to our show, and he got a lot out of our show. And I think his students are getting a lot out of his use of Cinema 4D for illustrating things that are hard to explain in a textbook, in a photo, right? So it's like once they see these things kind of pop off the page and animate, their understanding of like heart valves and things really like kicks in, and that's what he likes about motion graphics. So it's like he's a super specialist in the heart field. I forget what the actual title is. It's like some crazy title, but he's gotten so much out of that and out of our show that he was like, I want to donate something to you. And I'm like, well, we don't really have like a Patreon or anything. But his idea actually was to buy copies of the course to give away as a scholarship. So that's what we're going to be doing. And the way that we're going to do it as well, once we figured out what the criteria are going to be, is we are going to have a certificate of scholarship that looks something similar to this. This is a mock-up right now. Jeremy's working on this. This is going to be an animated certificate of scholarship that you get, and it will be minted, and we will transfer the minted piece to you in some way, shape, or form, whatever you want it transferred on, probably OpenSea. It'll be animated. You also get a physical piece with this, and it will have the scholarship up with like a little bit of shimmer, and every once in a while you'll see the logo come in and the dancer dance. So it's kind of a fun way to do that. We're thinking of fun and interesting ways to do NFTs, to utilize NFTs in the blockchain. And this will be your official blockchain certificate of scholarship. And so we'll award those. Mark, maybe we'll do a video or have you on for a short segment to announce the winners. But we will talk about all that. We'll put videos out on social. Make sure you subscribe, YouTube and Instagram and all that stuff, even TikTok, where we also have funny tips and things that you can't get in the other places. So stay tuned on that. And so I wanted to talk first of all about what these changes are in the new course. We're going to open it up and we're going to talk about it. We're going to take questions as well. And then, of course, Alex, we're going to talk to you about your experience with the course a little bit. And I'm interested to see if people have suggestions, ideas, questions on Houdini. So I'm going to open it up. I know Jeff Burns already said suggestions on titles for the next course. Continue not being afraid of Houdini, or I still know that you're not afraid of Houdini. My suggestion was no longer afraid of Houdini. So I don't know. We'll think of something.
Or like become afraid of Houdini once again.
Yeah.
To make it super ridiculous.
So you're
hard
not
for
afraid
no
of
reason.
Houdini, huh? Let me tell you about Vex. But let's open it up. So when you go to Mograph.com, you click on classes, you can go to your class portal. We use a service. We don't build all this stuff custom. That would be ridiculous. We use services that are already built for this. So you log in to our course platform that we have built in with this third party here. And when you go to your course, it shows all your progress and all of that stuff. And we're just going to go down and talk about these chapters and what's new and what's not new by actually showing you what the course looks like if you're inside of it. So let me open it up so I can show you what it looks like, not as me as an admin, but what you actually get here. Let me mute the site. Probably don't want to hear the course at this point. But so this is what it looks like. You have a really cool like motivational speech that comes up at the beginning and kind of guides you through it. There's a lot of downloads and things that you might or might not want to get depending on what you're working on. And so some of those are pretty big files. So it outlines all of that. There's a discussions tab. If you have any questions, I will testify to the fact that the minute anybody asks any question at all in here, Mark, you are all over it. And so the discussions tab is super valuable. Anything you want to know, Mark goes out of his way into screenshots and draws on it like Madden and whatever, and like helps you get through your crazy nodes and things. So let's talk about what's new and not new in here. I thought I had put some shiny little badges next to these. I guess they don't. Do they not show up in here? I don't know. 2.5. Let's talk. Oh yeah, here they are. So chapter 2.5. What we've done on any of these in general is we put a little star if it's an updated chapter, and we put a little blue new badge if it's something new. So, Mark, why don't you tell us about what's new here, and I'll just navigate to what you're talking about.
Yeah, for sure. So in chapter 2.5, originally chapter 2.5 was a part of chapter 2. We just had a little rendering blurb where we kind of went over how to do a basic rendering in Redshift and in Mantra. And so with chapter 2.5, with the new version of this course, I wanted to add Octane support because a lot of people, our industry basically uses either Redshift or Octane. And I felt like there were a decent number of people who I felt were kind of missing the Octane portion. They wanted to have that, included in the course. So I felt like, okay, we've got a few render engines we're adding in here. Might as well do Solaris since that's new as well, which is another, Solaris is another context inside of Houdini for doing, USD-based scene building and rendering using Karma, their new render engine. So there's Mantra render engine, there's Karma render engine, there's Redshift and Octane, and I don't know if I'm missing anything. It looks like it's all that, but I felt like with all that, with that many render engines and scenarios, it was deserving of its own chapter. So we just kind of broke it off and put it in between chapter 2 and 3.
I think that's good because you got the whole Octane world, and it's, let's be honest, it's mostly people using Cinema 4D and Octane in that world, right? That's what it feels like anyway. And you've got Redshift, obviously, because that's Maxon's, and you got Mantra, built-in Solaris, like you said. So it's like if you're already in Houdini or you already kind of know Houdini, you can learn about what's already built in. You probably already kind of know about that, so it's good to get the refresher. If you're somebody who's coming in from Cinema 4D or something else, it doesn't have to be Cinema 4D, obviously. This is a little bit tailored to Cinema 4D artists, but anybody can take the course. A lot of those people are coming with Redshift and Octane experience, and I think that's great to show, and to show the install too, because sometimes these installs are very taxing.
Not as straightforward as it is to install a render engine in Cinema 4D for sure. It's all, there's tweaking with the environment file or using packages. I don't go over using packages because I find they're a little bit harder to troubleshoot than the environment file. And that's something you can get into on your own later on. But for getting you started going, I feel like it's really great. And also, throughout this process, I got to learn Octane, and I think Octane in Houdini is, it's pretty awesome. I mean, it's a great render engine. It looks gorgeous, and I'd never really used it except for maybe one job when I first started at ABC. We used Octane on one job there, but yeah, it's great, and it's super capable in Houdini.
And I like how EJ is trolling the chat about Blender. Blender's free. Did you know Blender's free? Have you heard of Blender? It's like the seagulls in what Disney movie is that? Is that Finding Nemo? Mine?
Yeah. I think so.
Blender? Yeah. Blender? They just come out of the woodwork, but actually, that is a good question, though. Tell everybody about Houdini's levels of tiers of registration, depending on if you're, just getting started. Indie, what is it? Indie, apprentice. What are they?
Yeah, so you've got Apprentice is like the free version, which anybody can get. You just enter in your email, and it's limited to, I think, it's a lower resolution render. You can only use first-party render engines, so you'd only be able to use Mantra and Karma to render in there, and your renderings would be watermarked. But it's definitely enough to learn most of the content in the course. Now, if you want to take things to the next level, there's Indie, and I believe Indie is about, don't quote me on it, but I think it's about $270 for 1 year.
That sounds
or if
about
you buy
right.
If you buy 2 years, it's $400. So you kind of save some money if you buy 2 years outright. Yeah. And that gives you basically it's basically the same as a full effects license, except you're required to be making under $100K per year to be legally using that version of the software.
Okay, and here's the thing that I never understood. Is that $100K per year for your business, or that you make off of using specifically Houdini?
That's where I don't
So
know, but
weird.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that if you're running a motion design business and you're using Houdini as part of your product, whether you're, calculating the percentage of time you're spending in Houdini and or the number of billable hours you have in Houdini, I don't think it's accounted for in such a way.
Yeah.
I think that it's really kind of one of those things that you gotta, just Scout's honor with that thing and try to do the right thing. And I'm sure if you reached out to Side Effects, they would give you exactly the right answer on that one.
Right. Of course, when it really came down to it, yeah. But it's not as easy to figure out as like if you're doing like Unreal or something, because they can base that on like your sales, so it's very easy to figure out. So
yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, beyond Indie, there's core and effects and various levels of what are those like floating licenses will be more expensive, but beyond that you're getting into the studio level, the professional level licenses that kind of get you full access to the software, and there aren't really any limitations to the software. So like one of the major issues or things going between versions of software is that Apprentice has its own file format, its own file extension .hip.lc or .nc, and you can't send Apprentice files up to Indie or up to Effects. You can't send Indie files up to Effects. But you can go the other way. You can take an Effects file and send it to an Indie user or to an Apprentice user. So they kind of control how that flows, just kind of manage to make sure there aren't like any Indie or Apprentice users feeding assets into a professional pipeline that's using Effects licenses and stuff like that.
I see. But
yeah.
I think you can technically convert it up if you ask nicely and go through some sort of process. Isn't that a thing? Or am I completely thinking of something else? Maybe I'm thinking of Nuke.
Yeah, you can up convert a Apprentice to an Indie file using Orbolt, which is an online sort of portal. But then to go from Indie to Effects, that's like sort of a one-time thing that that Side Effects will do for you upon purchasing full Effects license. Is at least this is the last I heard, is that they will take all your project files, you'll hand them over to them, and they will return you Effects versions of the files. Okay. But there isn't like an online updater for it. That's sort of like a bespoke, like, one-off customer service type of an interaction.
Right. It's not an easy thing to do. Yeah.
Yeah.
The Orbital thing though is really easy to use. The Orbital like upgrading, because I started the class with Apprentice and then I went into Indie basically when I got to the like rendering portion of the class. But it's like super easy. You just send them the file, update it, and they'll send you back just the Indie version of the file.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Let's go over the rest of the chapters real quick, and then Alex, I want to get into some of your experience. You got chapter 3 here, this geometry overview. You've actually added a bit in here, and I like the coffee mug deal, because this is a new chapter. This is like a procedural coffee cup that you made, right?
Yeah, so like in our original like basics of modeling, where we go over like the greatest hits like extrude and I don't know, sweep and stuff like that. In the original one, like using the bend deformer and stuff like that, it was kind of just a vague example where I just kind of had like a plane and a circle, and it wasn't like the most applicable sort of geometry. So I felt like it would be kind of fun to take it a little bit further and do a coffee mug, some sort of real world object that makes a little bit more sense in terms of actually having a goal that we're working towards instead of just using modeling tools on an abstract grid. So that's sort of where this came from. So we kind of do in the first part, in this 3B part, we kind of do how to like classically model it in sort of a destructive kind of more, in a way that would be more akin to like how you would work in a classical modeling application. And then we kind of go over some stuff in the next section about how to work with groups. And then we come back to and proceduralize the coffee mug in the following lesson, where we can actually, make it so that it's a little bit more bulletproof, that we can actually move the points around of the handle and have it re-bridge to different sections of the coffee mug. And just kind of working with getting your mind a little bit more ready to think in the procedural way that you can that you do when you're working in Houdini. So
bulletproof coffee. Isn't that a real thing? Isn't Bulletproof a brand of coffee actually?
I bet it is, because I think there's everything you could possibly think of has become a brand of coffee at some point.
Ooh, look at
Totally.
that procedural mug. Ooh, that's looking weird. It's getting weird.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's
It
cool.
breaks for a little bit, and then it ends up working. But
Oh man, that's awesome, because you even got the UVs mapped on it and everything. Is that
Yep.
what you're doing there? Yeah.
Yep, yeah, a little UVing.
Yeah. Awesome. I
Sure.
don't know enough about Houdini to get all the way through this. I try. I know all the buzzwords, you know.
Yeah.
And you got some updates as well. I remember you had like the cell head dude. You can see that in the promos. You did some updates to some of these for the copies. What else do we have? What else is new here?
I think like I did a new intro to VOPs. I just kind of some of the sections I felt just needed to be a little bit clearer, more clearly stated. So I did go over some and not necessarily change too much, but just give them some slight tweaking and re-recording of sections to make them like flow better. Because as a student, I was trying to follow along, and I'm like, okay, I felt like I was bouncing around too much, so I just tried to streamline and make some of them a little bit more straightforward. And then in the second section, when we get into like Vellum is a chapter that was like heavily redone. Like almost every single lesson here had major redo going on with it because of all the things that have changed it. Vellum being a relatively new like piece of Houdini, it is being developed heavily as we were building this course, and so a lot had changed between 17.5 and 18 and 18.5, and I just felt like a lot of these lessons it was necessary to either completely re-record them, add new sections to them. So in this section we added a new cloth. We did a new cloth
that
system.
cloth though. I'm gonna bring that up full screen for a second. I guess there's no point in me doing it 4K if we're on the. By the way, this is in 4K, the whole course. Like you go full screen with this, you switch this over to 4K, put it on your 4K screen. It looks good. It looks very good. Oh man, breaking news. Oh, I thought 3090s were in stock. I was gonna let the internet know. I was wrong.
Oh.
So yeah, like when you put this in 4K on a 4K screen, man, it looks like you are looking at the program. Like it looks like you are looking right at Mark's screen. Man, this looks so good. We got to add this to the promo, by the by, on our new version
For
of the
sure.
promo that goes out. Yeah, Vellum was like pretty new when the original version came out, right?
Yeah, when the original version came out, Vellum was probably like a dot version away from being being in the software, and they're continuously like making it better and more stable. They're fixing bugs with it, stuff like that. And a lot of that, some of those changes led to like interface changes where the interface had changed so much it would have totally propagated through the entire video. And it was like, you know what, a lot of the parameters changed too. So like mass wasn't being handled the same and stuff like that. So it was just necessary to kind of go through. But in going through it, I found like a couple opportunities to actually split these videos apart and take a deeper dive into working with cloth and just adding like an extra lesson in there that had a more polished result so that we could kind of get into just higher level working with cloth itself. In this example, so kind of controlling it with a custom target and custom forces to suspend it in air and get it to twist around and do all sorts of abstract kind of floaty stuff like you were seeing there. But so yeah, that was kind of cool to go through and get through the Vellum chapter. Once I got through the Vellum chapter, I was like, okay, we're in the home stretch now. Like the rendering chapter and the Vellum chapter were like the most major changes, I feel like.
Yeah.
And then
it's extensive. Yeah.
It is, and like the Vellum chapter itself is enough to probably be its own course worth of information. I think a lot of the cool things that people think of when they do Houdini are things that are occurring in Vellum. So soft bodies, wires, hairs, grains, and cloth. They're all sort of hand in hand. Very cool Mography stuff you can do in there, and we just kind of cover all those bases the best we can, without getting too long-winded about it.
Man. It's so extensive, and I edited the first version of this course, and just sitting in front of it, like I was saying a minute ago, like just sitting in front of it, I kind of osmosed so much stuff from you in just my general understanding. And as somebody who probably will never get to any level of like real super understanding on this, like as far as like digging deep down into code or Vex or whatever, I feel like I have enough understanding that if I was working on a project with, say, like an art director or somebody on something, or if I was art directing somebody else and we needed something that was Houdini, I would understand the workflow enough, you know? And so that's what I like about it. And is that it's you talking about the basics that I feel is really important. Because like we were talking before the show, a lot of people, and you know, if you want to do it this way, it's fine. A lot of people want to dive right into those pretty looking sims and they want to get to the fun stuff. And you even have it labeled in there, right? Section 2, isn't it called the fun stuff, part 2?
The cool stuff or something. Yeah.
And yeah, it's there. But the way that you explain some of the basics about getting around, you can check it out actually if you want to get some free lessons. There are some free lessons on mograph.com, on our YouTube channel. If you go specifically to the Stop Being Afraid of Houdini page, you can check out some of these full-length samples. Either there's one where you kind of go through the interface and you kind of do a round trip, and there's another one, and we do have the outtakes as well. Also a sample of what one of your advanced lessons is like. But what I would say is do your first Houdini project and check out the way that Mark explains it, because it's one of those things where like IRL, if I was like going to hang out with a buddy and be like, hey, can you kind of show me around Houdini or something? This is what it would be, because just like when I'm familiar with Cinema 4D, if I hop into something else like this or Ableton or another piece of software, I wish that I had somebody sitting right next to me and I'd be like, God, where's this button? Can you just tell me where that button is? I just need to do this thing. And instead of Googling it and finding a YouTube tutorial or whatever, you can just ask your buddy, hey, what do I press? What do I press now? You know, I feel like you kind of get that when you are watching especially the intro videos to this. So it's something where you have to have some patience and be like, this is not the fun, cool, flashy looking stuff, but it is so, so important, because once you get to the flashy stuff, you're referencing some of the basics and fundamentals that you talked about at the beginning. So it's hard. It's hard not to go to that stuff.
Yeah, it is. It's like, and I think that's kind of one of the challenges with coming up with the content for the first part of this course is like, I know how it was for me when I was learning Houdini, and you're in the deep end pretty much was the only option. You're going in there and there's a certain amount that you're, required to know to do most of the cool tutorials out there. And I think like what I tried to do is distill out those things that I really wish I knew before I started doing any of the crazy stuff, just like knowing what an object merge is, knowing what your different contexts are, knowing what a relative reference is. Those are all like big words. And but people are casually spitting words like that all the time in tutorials. And it's like, if you don't know like what the basic terminology is, if we don't have a language that we all can agree on, at the outset, then what good is it going to do for you to just regurgitate some content that I'm spewing at you? So I really wanted to have that foundation there. It was really important to me to have that so that people could get the value out of the second half of the course that they were probably buying the course for in the first place. Right.
Anything else? There's the abstract Pyro and Pop Advect Part 3 with Octane. That's new.
Yeah, we added all the lessons that have fancy renderings in them. I do go over a basic version of how to set that up. So there's a portion of the course that if in chapter 6 we really cover how to go back and forth between Houdini and Cinema 4D. So it's getting stuff out of Houdini and getting it back into Cinema 4D. Mm-hmm. And part of the workflow of getting stuff out of Houdini and back into Cinema 4D is knowing what render engine you're working with.
Right.
So especially when it comes to particles. Particles, my workflow in Redshift is heavily dependent on Redshift proxies. And so
Right.
in chapter 6, it was really important for me to kind of solidify a particle workflow for Octane when you're bringing particles from Houdini into Cinema 4D. So I kind of go over some various methods there. And then all these principles about how to get stuff out of Houdini and back into Cinema 4D are touched upon on all the major example projects in the rest of the lesson. So because Octane is such a large, because Octane and Redshift and sort of getting the basic rendering setup is such a large portion of that, we added Octane content to all of those lessons as well. So
And I
that's
know that
all
like
there.
Redshift proxies actually make it pretty easy to do these particles, right? What is Octane like when it comes to that? What's the equivalent? It's not a proxy.
It would be like
what is it?
In Orbix file, it's like really similar to a proxy. So you can kick out a bunch of particles inside of an Orbix and get them in there. And also we go over how to do it using Alembics as well. So the two main ways would be like get your particles out using Alembic and get them out using Orbix files, and kind of touch on the strengths and weaknesses of doing it that way. Obviously, you know, between Redshift, Octane, and Octane, Orbix, and Alembic, there are all sorts of different strengths and weaknesses, and we get to kind of see what all of those are in this particle section.
And again, I wanted to stress, like, you go through this round trip workflow, but if you don't have Cinema 4D, it doesn't mean you can't take this course. I think that's a big thing to know, because what you're doing is for the most part, you're doing like Alembic round trips, right? So you could do that with another piece of software that does Alembic.
Yeah, or you could just render it straight out of Houdini, you know?
Right.
So like if you wanted to, you could just stop the lesson where we start kicking things out of Houdini and just start rendering straight up there. We have a rendering section earlier on in the course so that you can, you know, render these things if you want.
And I think it depends on the engine, but like if you're using something that kind of has the same interface in every program, like doesn't Redshift for the most part kind of look the same, you know, in different pieces of software?
It's just spread out a little bit differently in Houdini, and so it takes a little bit to just kind of know where to find the thing is. But once you get there, you're like, this is the tab where I go to set the global illumination or whatever. And Octane is really similar too in a lot of ways. I think I'm not as experienced with Octane in Cinema 4D as I am with Redshift, but I do know that when learning Octane to do the updates to this course, I was pretty comfortable pretty quickly going between the two pieces of software and kind of figuring out what I was doing there.
Yeah.
So,
anything new in like the flip fluids section or like some of the advanced topics? I don't know. You didn't really change any of the Vex stuff for now. That's for another. For another whole course, probably.
Yeah. Yeah, the fluid stuff, I think I redid one of the lessons in fluids just to make it more straightforward, and also because like the way surface tension's handled, it changed as well. It's like, you know, one of the hidden forces inside of the flip solver just behaves a little bit differently, so that one was kind of worth going through a little bit more in detail. So
you also had like a 11-minute like TLDR version of the previous lesson in case you
because of course that lesson to do the liquid morph is like mostly me tweaking and up-resing and getting the sim to be like final quality, and some people I felt like might just be like, I don't have an hour and a half to kind of deal with all of this tweaking of parameters. I just want to know how to do this morph like in the most basic sense. So I did a very, very quick setup, and then we dive in deeper after that.
Yeah. I'm looking at the, you got some voxels, you got the liquid. Yeah. It's definitely not as detailed looking, but yeah.
Yeah, it's like the most basic version of the setup. It's like if you hit the shelf presets and just like threw down the very minimal amount of information to get liquid particles to move from one position to another, and you're set. If that's all you need, then that's the lesson for you. If you want to go full on into the full on morph, you can do that too. You know.
I had a question that came in to the show last week, and I read it on the show, but I also promised that I would read it on this show because I feel like it's something that you would probably have something good to say. Let's see. I'm looking for the old one. Just give me 1 second. The old episode. I have my my podcast archive here. And last week was, what was that? There we go. This is from Graham. And it says, my question is C4D the best way here? Okay, we won't really talk about this specifically, but this is what brought it up. The question is C4D the best way to get hair onto a fracture object using the outside faces? That was kind of the question, right? Which in Cinema 4D, that would be, I think, kind of difficult to do without like baking the geometry or something. And so that led to the whole thing about Houdini, because there's probably a way to do that in Houdini procedurally. So the question was, at what point do you start using Houdini rather than C4D? And I don't think it's like one or the other. I think it's you use the right tool for the job. But personally, he says, personally, I think this would be much easier in Houdini, the faces thing. I guess there's an upfront cost of learning Houdini. I guess it could be an interesting question for, say, Mark. At what point did you feel like Houdini was the right tool?
Yeah, I think, for me, I'd spent a decent amount of time, fiddling around in Houdini before I was really ready to use it on a job. So I'd say I was learning it after hours, like after work, at my old job, kind of just in my free time, kind of just experimenting, making little renders or just more or less building with setups and getting used to nodes and stuff like that. And then eventually there was a project I had where I had to make these cables that are for a crane system.
Mm-hmm.
These cables are packed with various thicknesses and they all kind of coil around together. And I'm like sitting there in Maya, because I actually came from Maya originally. Now I'm a C4D Houdini user, but I originally started in Maya. I'm like, I have no idea how I'm going to do this in Maya. But having been using Houdini for several months at that point, I was like, okay, let me just look at Houdini and see if it can do this thing. And then it clicked. I'm like, oh my God, this is it. I'm using Houdini on a job now. You know what I'm saying? Something clicked inside of my head where I was, suddenly felt like, oh no, this is absolutely the answer for this job. So I think that you have to get comfortable with it. I don't know, Alex, where do you feel like your threshold was crossed when you were like, I'm ready now? You're on a job and you're like, this is perfect for Houdini, this aspect of it,
Oh, I don't know. It was just like, the more that I just kind of kept playing around with it, I feel like I became more comfortable with just how the entire system functioned. And I found that it spoke kind of more to me in thought process. I feel like in Houdini, just things, I think because maybe the way that I tend to look at projects or think about projects, the way that the Houdini's whole procedural workflow, I was just like, this just makes a lot more sense to me because I can actually kind of tell it what I want it to do. And obviously when you get to simulation stuff, I think I was with Laundry last year. That was the first time I ever did anything client wise with Houdini. And it was just we were actually doing a pitch for some fluid sim stuff. And I was like, well, I've been doing Houdini for a second. I'm just gonna try it and just kind of see what happens. And luckily it worked out. I was definitely still kind of figuring it out along the way as you do. But it's still kind of I knew enough to get me to the end result that I wanted to show the client, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's see, somebody like me, I'm 40, I'm irrelevant now. So I know my way around C4D and Octane very well. I can jump in. I'm past that threshold. I was talking about this with Matt on the show, and I kind of feel this way about Ableton right now as well. Past the threshold of saying, where is the button to do the thing? Where I need the guy next to me to answer a question, where I have to ask Tokyo Megaplex, hey, how do you do this thing in Ableton? I feel like I'm past the interface to where I can actually concentrate on attempting to make music. But that's how I feel in Cinema 4D, but I don't feel like at this point in my life in particular, I'm going to really dive into Houdini. I may mess around with it. I may do one thing here and there, but I think that can be kind of a good question to ask yourself. Like, if you're very comfortable in C4D and you're just busting out stuff, it's like, okay, what are you going to be doing in 10 years? And nobody really knows the answer to that, I guess. But for me, I don't think that I'm going to be the type of person that's sitting there cranking out Houdini level animation in the next 10 years. Therefore, I don't feel like that's the path for me. So I'm much more comfortable saying I'm trying to do this thing. I've got everything working in cinema, but hey, I'm going to hop on and I'm going to find somebody like Mark or Alex to be like, hey, I need to do this thing. C4D, I could do it technically, but I want it to be procedural. Can you do this for me and set it up? Even if it's something where maybe I know Houdini well enough to, if I have the nodes and everything set up, I could tweak it a little. You know, the question really is, like, at what point is it not a good idea, I guess, to learn Houdini? Because maybe your goal is to become an art director in 5 or 10 years and be a manager or run a company. It's like, do you need to know every little bit, or can you do like me and kind of osmose bits and pieces of it to be dangerous and drive, all the other graphic artists nuts because you don't really know what you're talking about?
No, I definitely think there is like a art to knowing when to delegate something and when it is your thing. Like, I think I got into Houdini because I originally wanted to do movies, and then I wanted to do like Transformers or something, like I wanted to do like Hollywood effects type stuff and explosions and whatnot, and then found the motion design part of it and just like really latched onto it and felt more like it was something I could be a part of, and that this part of me could be a part of motion design. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And so that really is like where I identify, in terms of my skill set, is like working with sort of effects driven motion design work. And so if that is, and there's multiple ways to do that. You can do that in X particles. You can do that in C4D. It's really about it's not necessarily what the best tool for the job is. It's what's the best tool for you for the job. I think someone said that. I don't know if it was Sage or someone said that to me at one point. It's stuck because it isn't. It's everyone's journey is different, and it is. It's good. It's good when you're younger. It's good. You explore, you try a bunch of different things, and you start to eventually narrow in on the thing that really gets you going. And it's different for everyone,
Right.
Totally. Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I feel like a big part of like why I started kind of gravitating towards Houdini was also like I was looking at kind of like what you were saying, Dave. Like, where do I want to end up? Who are these artists that I'm looking up to? And like what is the type of art that they do? What is the type of art I want to eventually be able to do? And I realized like I was following, people like Mark, people like Adam Swab, like people who are these just like basically just like Houdini masters and like geniuses. And like I want to be able to create that. And I was essentially kind of getting bottlenecked with like trying to do it in cinema or in X particles. And I think again, this kind of goes back to the whole mindset thing. Like I was just telling a friend the other day, like one thing that like always trips me up in X particles, it's like this is a stupid small thing, but it's just like having the particles shrink down over age. Like it's, for some reason, the way that it's like set up in X particles is just not as like clear cut to me. But then in Houdini, like you just tell it like it's just over an age, like have it, shrink down. And it's like, duh, yeah, that makes sense. Like I'm writing it out. I can read what I'm telling it to do, and it's gonna execute A to B.
Right. Mm. And like, Mark, you work at Already Been Chewed, and Barton he gets in there, he gets down and dirty with the project files and things. But I imagine he's going into Cinema 4D when he's doing these things. He's not opening up your projects in Houdini and tweaking them, is he?
No, like there is a part of me that thinks that everybody should at least be able to light and render in Houdini, but that's a discussion for another day. I do
Yeah.
think, I do think that ultimately it's a huge time saver. If the more software everybody knows, like the more, interconnected things can be. The reason why the course itself is so heavily based on the C4D Houdini workflows, because that's like what I do at work, because I need to delegate. I can't be the one finishing every single Houdini shot. I need to get my sims, I need to get my cloth or whatever I'm working on, I need to get it out. I needed to get it to one of our look dev people, and they're going to take it to the next level, and I'm going back to sims. You know what I'm saying? Because like lighting and rendering is sort of second nature to, or it's not second. What is the term? It's not
second nature. Yeah, it's not second nature. But also, you don't really necessarily need to know that to do a cloth sim, because you're handing it over to somebody who just needs the Alembic, and then they're going to make it look pretty, right?
Yeah, exactly. So like I'll do my I'll do sort of like basic like look dev, like some basic lighting in Houdini just to make sure things are like looking like they're going to get there. And then I'll start with the C4D workflow, and getting C4D out. There's, 10 other artists who could take a stab at making it look even better. And I can stay focused in Houdini, because really when you get into a small studio like scenario, it's good to have some people really kind of focus and specialize. Obviously we want to generalize a little bit. We need to do a little bit of everything, everybody does, but it's always like more efficient if I'm staying in the Houdini mindset and not trying to totally like change gears to camera animation or something like that,
That's why everybody had already been shoot as a copy of your course, so they can at least get their feet wet, right?
Yeah. And so we're kind of dabbling around in that stuff and trying to find good ways to do it. There's a few people there who know it. Now we've got another guy on board, Nick, who we have hired, and he's just awesome. He's having such a blast. I think it looks like he's having fun. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, I think he's having a blast. He's really good in it. Really great at like kind of just jamming on stuff, and we just bounce ideas back and forth, kind of help each other out. It's been really cool to kind of expand that part of our department, but also with that, we have to maintain that relationship with the other artists where we're all like able to have the assets where we need them so we can work the best way that we can. So like getting those assets into C4D is an extra step, but it's super handy for our studio to be able to do that kind of stuff. So yeah. And plus we have more C4D licenses than we do Houdini licenses, so we have more render power. So that's another one.
Another one.
Awesome.
So Alex, let's talk about your background actually, then we'll talk about your experience with the course. While we're chatting here, I'll bring up your reel. Cool. So tell us about what you do first of all in general. Your job. Are you contractor or do you work for somebody?
So I'm a freelance motion designer, 3D artist, based out here in LA. I've been in LA for, I guess like three and a half years now. Basically been freelancing the entire time I've been out here. I basically moved out here to switch into motion. I was teaching and performing music the entire time kind of before that. But I started dabbling in motion stuff about probably 5 or 6 years ago. I worked for a drumstick company in Nashville, and I told them, hey, I've taken one Photoshop class in high school. And so they go, oh, and you're also the youngest person?
Oh, you're
cool.
The graphic
You're going to start doing
now.
all of our,
yeah,
you're going to do our design, you're going to do our media, you're going to do like everything that is like,
of course,
this like younger generation kind of a tech.
Yeah. You know Photoshop?
So it was
I have this website I need programmed. That's
right.
Yeah.
It's exactly that. But yeah, so I mean that kind of opened me up to this world of like motion graphics. I kind of just got like super deep into it, just getting kind of obsessed. Like, oh, I love doing 3D stuff. Like this is so rad. You can do all these particle simulations, liquid simulations, whatever. So I just kind of kept kind of diving, and then eventually, like I was saying, I kind of just found my little bottleneck, and then there it is.
No longer afraid of Houdini.
Up top on the website. Yeah.
Oh,
I
you
flipped
did
the
you
name a
take
little bit.
REF's course as well?
Yeah.
Right.
Did it for the winter
Oh,
semester.
yeah.
Nice.
Are you in the NFT group?
The
Get
get NFT.
NFT? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm in there.
Because I know I've seen you in multiple places. I just can never remember, you know. And then there's that whole
Totally,
thing
we've got
where
so
there's
many
like a lot of
groups.
people. There's like there. I don't know what the thing about the universe is, but there's a lot of people that have the same name in this industry, and I cannot figure out. Like, there's a lot of Alexes. There's a lot of Pascals. There's a lot of what's the other Florians in the industry. It's really weird,
Yeah.
and I'm like, I can't get all the Alexes right. Like, which Alex is which? Yeah. So yeah, I have seen you around. So do you have NFTs out as well?
Yeah. I've got some NFTs out on Foundation, and I've got a collection that I dropped about like a month ago on known origin. Those are kind of the two sites I've been minting on this over this kind of time period.
It looks like you did the X Particles challenge here too.
Yeah, so this was like I think like one of the last projects that I basically did in X Particles before I was just like, all right, I need something a little bit more robust there. Yeah, like Mark's class honestly like came at the perfect time. Like obviously like 2020's been, was a weird year for everybody. But like for me it came at a very beneficial time in the sense that like, hey, you can't go anywhere.
Right.
You might as well like learn a program, because like obviously I'm like still learning the program, and it's like Houdini, you're not going to master that in a year, but I definitely feel like I got way further with the program than if it was just like a regular time period where I'm just like, all right, I'm gonna do a little bit here and there after work on the weekends or whatever. But now I'm just like, well, I'm not gonna go anywhere on the weekend, so I'm just gonna jam through all these classes and just kind of wrap my head around all of it.
Might as well. And I think
Totally.
it's kind of funny because we can also almost see where the consciousness of the Mograph community is going at certain times, because you can base it on an uptick in sales of this course. Like when COVID happened, all of a sudden there was this uptick, and I'm like, I guess everybody's like, well, I'm stuck inside, time to learn Houdini. And then the same thing happened right when NFTs got big. All of a sudden it was like everybody wants to learn Houdini to make like the best NFTs. It's so weird. It's like you can tell what people are thinking by that,
Totally.
A lot of people are trying to stop being afraid of Houdini. Yeah, so tell us about the process. So you knew a little bit, like what would you say at your skill level was when like going into the course as opposed to finishing the course? How did you feel
In terms of like using Houdini? It was the program that I had installed on my computer forever that I would open up and literally just hit close as soon as it opened. Because it was one of those where just like, I think because one, we're also used to that the cinema like UI is to me very inviting. Because like I remember the very first 3D program I ever opened was Blender. And this was not the Blender we know today, where it was like you open it up and there are a million windows thrown at you.
Yeah.
So it was kind of that same vibe where like I opened Houdini and it's just got like a more technical kind of looking feel to it. And you open it up and like, I don't know programming, I don't know like computer science stuff, like this is I can't do this. I'm just like, I'll just like panic and I'll just like close it.
That's how I felt.
But
with
I had like yeah.
that was me from 2011 to 2014 with Houdini. Was like, I tried, I'm done.
Yeah.
Right.
yeah. It's like you get as far as like having that icon on your taskbar, and that's it. No further than that.
That's just to impress people.
Yeah, exactly. If they come over and be like, check it out, I got that Houdini icon down there.
That's right.
But yeah, so like I was like just kind of I would try to, I guess, learn Houdini by osmosis, where I would just kind of constantly play different Houdini tutorials. But that was more, I think, I was trying to understand the thought process and like ideology kind of behind
and that
Houdini.
That does work. I admit. Yeah.
Totally. But then again, like what was so powerful with Mark's class for me was because it was geared towards Cinema 4D users. Like one thing that I've talked to actually multiple people about is like what's awesome is Mark's kind of constant references into what something is in Houdini and what it is in Cinema. Because now we have like an A to B correlation, and it's not just like, here's this button that does this function, and that's what it is. But now it's like, oh, well, if I was to say, think about this in Cinema terms, like that's the tool I would need. And now I know what it is in Houdini. So now I can like more easily relate those functions and kind of relate the operations that I need to make happen. Yeah. So that was like super powerful to me. And it's like definitely like, as we were like chatting kind of before we went live, like a lot of it is also just kind of accepting that Houdini, it's a different program. It's a different beast. And I think like that was one of the big hurdles for me to kind of get over first, where it's just like, well, I can't go into this expecting that things are gonna like operate and move and just be the exact same way as Cinema, because like, well, if it did, then why would I change programs? You know, like I might as well just say in Cinema if all I'm looking for is just another Cinema copy. But I think after kind of like coming to terms and just be like, well, I'm just going to have to basically learn this as it's an entire new skill set, and I'll just accept that for what it is. And that just bringing down that barrier allowed myself to just really kind of hone in and just be like, okay, this is how this program works. I just gotta start from the bottom up, and then, you know, that'll eventually get me there. And that's like part of the reason why I think like how the course is structured is awesome. Like, you've got the fundamental stuff at the beginning, and obviously, like, I think most people, you know, they look at Houdini stuff, they're obviously gonna be like, simulations. Let me do simulations. I don't want to learn any of these like basic things.
Instagram.
But yeah, exactly. Like, how do I get that like sexy looking simulation just instantly? But you know, I think with any program, it is extremely beneficial to go through these like super basic things, because it's also like you never know when you might pick up like a new hotkey, a new trick or whatever in hotkeys or learning these basics. Yeah. And like that I think in Houdini, like it's just like I've preached this to a lot of people this week, where I'm like, once you get used to the node system in Houdini and how it flows and the hotkeys and the operations, you will hate doing nodes in I think a lot of other programs. Like half the time if I'm in Redshift in Cinema, I'm like, why do I keep missing this node? I can't plug this in. I keep missing this node. And Houdini is just like, well, yeah, it's this, the nodes just feel a lot more like optimized for that type of workflow. And it's so hard for me to now live with like without having shake to release or even like Y to cut. Like both of those hotkeys are just saved my life so many times.
Yeah, they've done so much to make, and even still, when I was trying to learn it 10 years ago and it was impossible, like their interface has come so far to be like, the way that the node editor works now is compared to what it used to. It's just, they're always trying to make it more solid and more artist friendly. And, they're really they're reaching out. They you know, the side effects has talked to me about like, you know, that's what they want. They want to make the software more accessible. It's notoriously, you know, its reputation is the most difficult thing ever. And I really think that they're changing that, and they're actively putting in a huge amount of effort towards changing that and making it more accessible to people. So it's really cool. It is really cool. I feel like you get through a couple learning curve things at the beginning and you really start to get the feel of how SOPs works. And then you're going to start like moving and like feeling like if you feel like you can start setting up, you know, a cloner or something like that, you'll start to like really feel how you can actually build your own pieces of Cinema if you don't have them or whatever. It's cool because the thing is Houdini isn't the only piece of software out there. You can use it with other apps, you know. And it's really cool because the other thing is like, you know, with your work, Alex, you know, I noticed that you really, really enjoyed the course. I mean, you were posting stuff and tagging me, and I'm like, I love when students are posting and tagging awesome work and trying to take the projects and make them their own and discovering things that weren't even intended in the lessons, but just like, you know, experiment, seeing your experimentation, seeing you start to apply this stuff into like your commercial work. I mean, you were doing Axiom solver stuff with the was it FITC titles you did?
Yeah.
And like seeing you take this stuff that you had learned from the course and start applying it to, title work and installing other, Pyro solvers to accomplish that. I'm like, man, it's really cool to see someone like take the stuff and run with it and really integrate it into their work. It was really kind of an awesome thing to see, because prior to this, I did a couple tutorials on YouTube and I'd seen people make cool stuff out of it, but really it's until this course, I hadn't really seen people who I'd connected with on the internet actually like taking things that I was doing or teaching and actually like, integrating it into like a large portion of their career, which it seems like you have and a bunch of other people have who've taken the course as well. And so it was like really kind of inspiring and motivating for me to want to keep making this course as new and fresh as it can be, knowing that it actually is helping people. It's been really kind of a cool thing to see.
Oh yeah, 100%. Like like with the name Stop Being Afraid of Houdini, like this course I think 100% nails that title, because that is exactly what it did for me. Like I didn't like finish the class and just be like, I'm amazing at Houdini now. Like that doesn't happen. But it's exactly that, where like I now can look at this program and understand that's not nearly as intimidating as I'm making it out to be in my head if I just take the time to kind of think about things. And I'm also realizing that's honestly a lot of, the kind of Houdini flow is like, if I can explain to myself what I want to happen, I can more than likely make it happen in Houdini. I just need to be able to kind of explain the steps to myself so I know how to like write out these functions and whatnot. But yeah, this class, like, because it kind of broke down that barrier, it then like opened my eyes up to be like, oh, what are all these like other fun toys that are like out here that like people have created for Houdini, like Axiom or like mops and stuff like that, which are just, just like super, super handy tools. And yeah, I loved using Axiom on the FITC stuff, because it's like, it's a GPU solver, so it's just so much faster than like the vanilla Pyro that's inside of Houdini. So it was just like, this is so clutch for me just to like kick out different like versions and like different looks. And because it's inside of Houdini, then it's like, for the most part, things all function the same. I just need to know which attributes Axiom is calling that might be different than like the vanilla Pyro. But at the end of the day, like, what they are sourcing and what they're needing is basically the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have like a certain point where you had like your aha moment, almost like Neo, like, I know Kung Fu? Like, did that happen? Like, I knew Houdini. Did you have a point where you're like, wow?
I feel like I go through that like multiple times a week, honestly, where like it's like small things where like, if like it's like a piece of knowledge that like I've retained and I kind of like pull out. Like, actually, so this week I had it's super like stupid and it's like an easy thing, but it was like a funny moment where like I'm doing this like kind of hair simulation animation for a music artist right now, and like, well, he needed it to loop over 3 seconds. And like, I remember in Mark's class in like the particle section, he does like touch on like, how he got this like this piece to loop, to animate. And I was like, well, I could go back to Mark's class to just find that exact moment in time and like copy what he did. But let me think about it. Like, yeah. How would he have approached it in the class? Like, how would you have gone about this without like having someone to give you those like step-by-step guides? And I was like, okay, well, like if I just take like a time shift and I do like some like blend shape stuff, like I can make this work. And it worked.
And I saw a TikTok today about there's, I don't know if it's a plugin or something for Houdini that makes loops automatically for you.
Paul, I forget his last name. He posted he does like the Houdini like quick tips or whatever. Mm-hmm. And so it's the side effects like labs tools that they've been making. A lot of them are kind of like actually suited for like gaming stuff. Like there's a lot of stuff in there that's for like outputting to Unreal. Like there is like a Niagara node for you to like directly output Houdini particles into the Niagara system in Unreal, and you can call like you can retain all of the attributes like CD, P scale, all that stuff. Oh, I just lost my train of thought.
Yeah.
Yeah,
well,
no,
the
it's a
loop-
part of the yeah.
I can't
It's a part of
find
the
it,
side
but,
effects
yeah.
labs tools.
Yeah.
Paul
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Estevez.
yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
I think
yeah,
it was
that's
Paul
the name.
Estevez. Yeah.
Yeah,
there
but
you
it's
go,
it's
yeah.
just like, yeah, and the node is just like called make loop. So it's funny you say that because after I saw it, I was like, I totally forgot that this node existed, and I went back in, I just like plugged it in. I was like, well, yeah, I could have gotten there obviously a lot faster with this now, but I'm like, I'm still so proud of myself for being able to be like, well, if that node didn't exist,
Yeah.
I'm still
absolutely.
able to make it work, you know. And like before this course, I probably would have just been like, all right, hit the close button. We'll come back in a
go
few
into
years.
After Effects and get real creative with with the transparency. Yeah, get it just right. Or
That's like the perfect example where there's a plugin that exists. You didn't know it existed. You made your own plugin to do it.
Yeah.
You know, kind of a thing. If you know the fundamentals of how Houdini works, you can kind of get under there and build that functionality that you don't already have.
Right.
And then a lot of times Side Effects Labs has the tool for it because Side Effects Labs is awesome. I always am like amazed at what I'm seeing there. I'm like, oh, before I go and build this big fancy thing, I'm going to just check Side Effects Labs real quick and make sure they didn't already do it, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
And there's all those like other like free kind of tool sets that are out there, like what is it, like QLib, and then obviously like Mops, like the baseline version of Mops is completely free. Now they have like Mops Plus that you can sign up for, and that works in like DOPS and all that. And I think like Mops is also like an awesome tool for people coming from the cinema side to like use, just because it's basically pulling like the Mograph effectors. And having those like functionalities inside of Houdini, and it is set up somewhat similarly, but it's like in a I think for a lot of cinema users, it's a lot more like digestible of a way to approach, because it is like you don't necessarily need to know a lot of the like under the hood stuff. It's good to have that knowledge, but you don't necessarily need to in order to get something to work with Mops.
And that TikTok stuff, man, I'll tell you, like, you know, TikTok gets a bad rep or whatever. Or people who don't understand it, you know, just kind of rag on it or whatever. But I'm telling you, I've learned more about Ableton sitting on the toilet. And it's so, like, in these little, you know, minute segments, like, you should do this with your EQ. You should do that with your EQ. Oh, I'm going to save that to my phone, you know, and then go back. And what was that plugin that they were talking about that's free, that's really good? Oh, Valhalla. Okay, I'll check out Valhalla. And I'm starting to learn all these things. I'm like, I got to do this for Cinema 4D. And just like, you know, Paul is doing that with Houdini, I would like to say that Mograph.com does have a TikTok if you'd like to check it out and see Dorpy's adventures and some other things that you don't get in other places. We do have, like, I just started doing the quick tips. But again, it comes back to, like, you know, you're talking about those shortcuts that you learn. I did this one on the 7 key in Cinema 4D, and oh my gosh, like, so many people were like mind blown, and my mind was blown the first time I heard about it. I think maybe Chris Schmidt told me about it, but doing you know, TikTok, you know, will be good for that, but also doing a course and going to the basics and not skipping forward to those particle things. You're gonna pick up those little things like the shortcuts, like, is it H? What does the H key do in Houdini?
It like frames everything.
Homes, yeah.
Something like that. I did not know how to do that until I was editing your course and I heard you talking about it and framing it up. And I'm like, okay. So the next time I had Houdini open and I was trying to go through some sort of project or something that was a big mess, I was like, oh yeah, H. I got to remember H. So there's all these little things, and there's something else I was going to say too, and I forgot what it was. Oh, shoot, it'll come to me here in a second, but I don't remember. Completely lost it. I'll think of it in a second. But what are you working on right now that you might be able to talk about or not talk about? I don't know, but that maybe you're working in Houdini right now that you feel like you're taking some of that stuff that you learned, and are you doing it in your NFTs? Are you working for a client on anything right now? Like, what are you currently working on?
So the I guess the last like collection of NFTs that I dropped on Known Origin they were kind of like stemmed out from the like FITC exploration, and also like furthering the whole like Axiom Pyro Solver. It's basically just kind of a series of me exploring like meshing different types of pyro simulations, whether I'm driving those with different shapes, different velocities, different noises. Like it's just a number of different kind of parameters of just kind of playing around with and seeing what kind of results I could get. And I also wanted to kind of play with the whole attribute transfers and stuff like that. So I had, doing the smoke stuff, there's like a couple ways you can kind of approach, I guess, like coloring the smoke. And like before doing any kind of Houdini stuff, I would just do it in the shader level, where you're just kind of basically remapping the density. But the thing with that is like you're gonna get like kind of like edging and like fringing, as it's like it just doesn't look like smooth. And I had been, I think, just watching a lot of pieces where they're doing kind of like color advection basically inside of like pyro simulations, and I was like, well, that's super pretty. I'd love to play with that. So that's kind of what I played with here. Was like I took the the color data from the smoke sim itself and then passed it back onto the geometry that I meshed on top of the sim. And then everything else is just like throwing different like VDBs and VDB smoothers and like stuff like that on top of it. So that was a super fun project to play with, and it like I'm definitely using so many kind of tricks that like with VDBs and stuff that Mark teaches about in the course. And that's something that's been super powerful and fun to play with inside of Houdini, is just the VDB workflow. Like I do find that, and maybe it's because I'm more familiar with it now, but I find that it makes more sense to me than say like Cinema's like volume builder and like mesher and stuff. And I do think it's a lot faster inside of Houdini too, to just like get through those functions and whatnot. So that was like the latest thing I released. And then now I've been kind of dabbling in Unreal Engine a little bit here and there. And so just kind of like this like personal project I just released the other day, on my Instagram, was just kind of, playing with Vellum, the thing that everybody loves, and just kind of mapping this. I was trying to go for like mapping like a stone texture, or just something that looks like it should be like hard, and having it kind of like undulate and fold into this like just this texture that you don't expect it to happen. Except that it did end up kind of looking more like a tortilla than say like rocks or whatever. Yeah. But yeah, so those kinds of like, I'm just kind of like, I keep going on the Houdini train. I'm actually now doing the not to promote it, another company, but like Hello Lux just dropped that like kind of organic growth course or whatever, and like that's been awesome too, because I'm like, okay, there's like Mark also turned me on to the power of Vex, and also to different resources of where I can learn more about Vex, because I think like after I finished this course, I almost like went straight into Joy of Vex just to kind of understand certain like base level things. And like now as I'm going through these other courses, I'm also like just seeing things from like, okay, I've seen this probably in like another tutorial, or like someone else is like trying to teach this concept to me or whatever, and like now because of like all this practice and like going through this course, I see what they're actually trying to teach, and like I understand what this thing is that they are trying to get across. And it's not nearly as complicated as I made it out to be. It's just because I maybe heard some scary words, things like quaternions or whatever, but it's like it's not that crazy when you're just like, I just need that function. I don't need to understand the maths that's behind it. Like right. I could, but I don't want to like hurt myself over that. So like if you just need to know like the functions, and then that'll get you from A to B.
Yeah. Now I know what I was going to say earlier. We were talking about learning the little bits and pieces, and when you're watching a tutorial or you're taking a course, in my opinion, like there's always two ways. We were talking about this before the show. There's always two ways to go about it. If you want to learn how to do something online in Cinema 4D or whatever piece of software you're using, you can either become really good at following tutorials, or you can become really good at like figuring things out. And for me, I do not learn well when it's like, hey, just go do this thing and type this thing in. And no bashing on Ron Dalby, or is it Ron Dalby? Is that how you pronounce it?
Rohan? I think?
Rohan Dalby.
Rohan, yeah.
Yeah.
Rohan, and or in Tagma, but when like sometimes I'll try and do some of those tutorials and it's cut very tight, and it's like, and he even says in the tutorial, he'll be like, I figured out that these are the best numbers for this thing. And it's like, if you need to learn how to do like this particular powder explosion, these are the exact settings that you need for whatever it is, your particles, mass, gravity, whatever's in there, right? And I tried to go through something like that a long time ago, and it was like, put 38 in here, and then hit this button, and then connect this node. And there was no reasoning for it. Why am I connecting this node? And plus, it's so tightly cut that you got to pause every 5 seconds to go do the thing. I'm a better learner when I'm sitting in a more relaxed environment, and someone says, now you're going to type in 34 here, and here's why you're going to type 34 in here, you know. And those guys are great at making that stuff, but it is very tight. And personally, I can't learn like that. I want to know why. And even back, you know, remember I used to make tutorials. Back in the day, I would do the same thing. I would explain, I'm stopping here and I'm doing this thing, and here's why I'm doing this thing. I feel like as a student who's just learning a piece of software, it's so important to know the why. You know, or else you're just a tutorial follower, and then you're going to get a job somewhere and someone's going to ask you to do something that there's no tutorial for, and you're going to be in trouble.
100%. Like, I mean, just like talking about like doing this for like a client job, like obviously the client jobs, I'm not going to be able to just look at Mark's projects and be like, all right, every single thing that the client is asking me for is going to exist here. Like that's just not the case. But because of the fundamentals that he's established and just like understanding how Houdini's attributes work and all that jazz, like now I can like, okay, I can implement these ideals and this like thought process that he's basically instilled in me going through this course, and now I can solve my own problems and figure out how do I get this liquid simulation or whatever to do the thing that I want it to do. But it's not gonna I can't just go flip simulation tutorial bottle porn like a super specific thing. Like it's just not going to exist.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's super powerful.
Yeah, it's about like, I think you get into that sort of like problem solving mindset. Like Houdini's a problem solving tool, and like you get there by like kind of marinating in it. I don't know how to kind of describe it, but I felt like it took me a little while of being in it before those aha moments happened. And, you know, earlier we were talking about, like, when was your Neo, like, moment where you're like, I know Kung Fu or whatever. And I swear I'm still having moments like that, like, on the weekly, where I'm like, oh my gosh, this is going to be so sick. This thing that I just thought of, it's going to work out, and I think it'll work out, you know, and then you go and try and do it, and then you realize that you've unlocked like a whole new understanding of thing X.
Yeah.
Something beried in there.
The older I get, this is how my learning experience goes in this industry. Like 10, 15 years ago, it was like, let's see if I can do this toward the camera. It was like I was doing this slow curve going up and learning, right? But now at my age and with my experience and everything that I'm doing now, it's a lot different than what I thought I would be doing 10 years ago. But I feel like my experience is like this. I know this much about Cinema 4D, and then I work on a project, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, now I know all of this. And I take this big step up, and it's not as often, right? So it's kind of like in these giant steps. It's like, okay, I got to sit down and learn how to do X, and all of a sudden it just snaps in. It's not this gradual curve anymore. And I don't know when that change happens, but there will be certain points where I feel like I just upped my game 10%. Just out of the blue, working on this project because I had to figure this thing out, and now I'm up here, you know, and I still have a long way to go. But maybe next time I'll learn a thing and I'll go up here. I don't feel like it is a slow curve anymore, and maybe it's just like the harder it gets, or more complicated it gets. You know, you go into Houdini or something, it's gonna take a while for you to get to that next step, right? You're gonna have to take the whole introduction, the first half of the course probably, before you feel like you took a step up. Okay, now you took that step up. Now let's get into fun particle sims and the dancing characters and the shoes like you do, and then take another step up from there. It's I don't know what you would call that. Is that it's not a square. I guess it's kind of like a square wave, but
It's like stair stepping almost.
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone else feels like that, or maybe I'm just weird, but
No, I think there is a certain amount that you gotta beat it in, like beat it into yourself, really. Like when I watch like Stephen Nipping's tutorials, he's an ILM guy who does these insane, he works on Star Wars and stuff like that, and he does destruction sims, and he does tutorials on it. And those are some of the tutorials that really like kind of unlocked things for me. So I was like watching these Stephen Nipping tutorials. He's talking about destroying buildings and adding smoke to it and stuff, and I'm just like, okay, I don't know anything that I just watched, and I watched it 3 more times. And he does go over the fundamentals, but the information is so dense and it's so heavy with information that you're just like, it's kind of overwhelming. You can follow along with it, but then like I would go through it like 3 more times. A lot of his videos I've watched 2 or 3 times, and these are like really heavy videos. And watching it 2 or 3 times, just having the determination, and then all of a sudden something just hits. You know what I'm saying? And then you're like, whoa, okay. Like, I think like something like what you're talking about, Dave. Just you unlock something that it just takes.
Achievement unlocked.
Yeah, it just takes a little bit of extra effort, some time to just kind of think about it,
Sarah,
It's also just like with it.
Yeah. And
I mean, it's just like with any other like skill. Like I think like you always have to, you're practicing and you're always gonna like build on top of that. It's just like it's not gonna happen nearly as quick as we all want it to. Like especially with this whole like kind of instant gratification thing. But like I think that's something that I had to kind of tell myself that it's like it's okay to watch a tutorial more than once, or like a class more than once. Like you can watch it. I mean, like this. Like I have it for life. So like anytime I want to watch it, it's there, and like I should be okay with that. That sometimes a certain concept or whatever, it's just gonna take multiple repetitions until it kind of is cemented in my brain. And even then, like I probably still have to revisit it in the future if I like haven't done it in a while. But it's always there.
Yeah, that's like one of the most important things I think about learning stuff is, for me, a lot of the times I'll just like watch a whole bunch of tutorials. Like I'll do an Intagma Patreon, and I'll just crush through a bunch of tutorials, a bunch of courses, and like, just sort of like absorb the information, not necessarily following along. But for me, a lot of something that's been a good skill for me to have is not necessarily remembering how to do the thing, but remembering where I saw the tutorial of how to do that thing.
Right.
Then watch as many tutorials as you can, and then when you have to do the thing, you're like, oh yeah, totally, this was
that one. Yeah.
This was in a nipping tutorial, or this was in this is on the CG Wiki webpage. I saw there was a setup for this. You just kind of like absorb as much of it, and then you know where to go to find the exact thing that you need to do the thing that you're trying to do.
If you have a photographic
100%.
memory, then it's really easy.
Yeah.
I'm sometimes I feel like it's a curse that I know I saw that thing. It was sitting right there. I see it in my brain, and it's not there anymore. And I think Matt talks about this too. It's like you saw that tutorial, and you can see it sitting on like LesterBanks.com, and you're like, okay, I saw it on Lester Banks. You kind of have that record going in the back of your head of knowing which tutorials to hit up. But I think it's kind of the same analogy, but if you think about it in terms of, you're not climbing up a hill a little bit at a time where you could stop and take a rest and then continue forward with some of these things. Sometimes, like you're talking about, you got to do it a bunch of times and get that repetition. It's almost like scaling a wall. You're going to have to get up to the top of the wall before you can stop and walk at the top, walk around at the top, and then go scale the next wall. If you don't make it to the top, you're going to go back down to the bottom, and you're going to have to start over next time. And I feel like you try and scale the wall like 10 times, and when you finally get up there, that's the aha moment on that one thing, and then you know Kung Fu, and then you go to the next skill. The chat, I do want to open up the chat. We're getting kind of late here. Gonna start winding down, and I want to open up the chat to any questions. It looks like a lot of people in here know you. A lot of people that I know you. Probably, I mean, all the inside jokes and everything, something about carbs and bread. And is this from the NFT Discord, or is it from the Windbush Discord? Where is this coming from?
It's just like a mix. It is like the Windbush Discord and then like a couple other just like motion graphics friends that I've like met on over Discord online. I do have quite the obsession with bread. I do very much enjoy eating breads and going to bakeries out here in LA. So that would be the jab that they're trying to throw.
And they also said they're not used to seeing you with so much light around you in this space. Like, are you usually like in the dark like me?
And like normally if we would be like webcamming, it'd probably be like at least another hour, because like I mean here in LA it's still sunny for the most part. But yeah, by the time we're usually chatting with each other, I'm probably got like a hoodie like dumped over my head with like the gaming lights all going, and it's just like dark in here, like usual environment.
Ken's is asking, are tortillas bread? That's tough.
That's
like is a hot dog a sandwich? It's really tough.
I think I would say no. I don't know. Is that a
I don't know.
Does bread have to like rise? Does it need like yeast in it or something?
Oh yeah,
I think so.
Isn't
no? I literally
don't inside the tortilla.
I mean, we're all chefs here, right? Like
yeah.
we all.
I have no idea.
I have no idea.
Oh, Sarah did say they're flatbread. That is, I guess that's a bread, right?
Yeah, but
like a
it's
pita.
Puffy. Pita is puffy. It has like that yeast dough.
The dough that has
that yeast dough. Yeah.
I think we need a chef on the show next time.
I know.
Yeah.
We have to figure this out. Any Houdini questions or motion graphics questions or course questions before we go? Is there anything else that y'all want to talk about or cover? Did we forget anything?
I don't think so. I think we mostly covered it. I'm really just hung up on the whether bread is a yeast or not.
Yeah.
It's definitely a carb.
Unleavened bread dough.
Yeah.
Oh, Michelle's right. Where are the Houdini bread sims?
Yeah.
Okay, there is a mind-blowing like SIGGRAPH thing, and I don't think it's even Houdini. I think this is just straight up geniuses working in C++ or something. But there is a bread baking and bread tearing simulation that is using like a totally new kind of physics engine thing. If you go look up SIGGRAPH bread something or other, your mind will just be like, it's absolutely stunning. Very cool.
Gotta check that out.
It's just like the one, I'm sure a lot of people have seen this, but there's that Houdini tutorial, or I don't know if it's a tutorial or if it's just showing off the box, you know, the classic, the box moving, right? And it's just moving, and apparently it's got a real physical working combustion engine inside of it that's powering it.
Yeah.
Literally by physics.
Zapco Heck. I actually don't know how to pronounce the name of the person, but it's like XAPOKHEH, something like that. And at any rate, yeah, that person is crazy. They are absolutely insane. They built an assembly like computer based out of RBDs, like a mechanical computer that you could program in Houdini's interface that was all running off of values that were being determined by gears turning in an RBD simulation inside of a box. That was absolutely mind-blowing. It's the most insane thing I've ever seen. It's like you watch this, if you go look up, it's the same how to make a cube thing. You go watch the video that they did about how to program in Houdini, and it's like, well, of course, we made this box, and then he's like entering values into it, and it's returning like calculations that he's entering into it. And then he opens up the lid of the box, and it's like this gigantic clock full of physical things that are actually, I'm like, and then he goes through it, I'm like, I did not know that it was possible for someone to be that smart. Like, it's absolutely insane.
It's insane.
Yeah.
Oh, that's nuts.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah. It's like with some of the stuff you see in Cinema 4D that Merck was doing. And I have no idea where he went to, but yeah, like there are these outliers that are just so into the program that you just can't even comprehend how they're so good at it, you know. But we got some questions. Jeff is asking about what you recommend after taking this course. I'm pretty sure Jeff finished your course, I think, or at least has your course. And I think at the end you might mention a few. I think one of them was the joy of Vex at the end, right? What would you recommend doing after you're no longer afraid of Houdini?
Yeah, I would definitely like watch Intagma's stuff. Intagma is like, I mean, the content is super dense, but I feel like having been through the course, you would have the fundamentals you'd need to start digging into an Intagma tutorials. They're some of the greatest like Houdini tutorials out there. Stephen Nipping, obviously. The whole CG Wiki webpage, if you're into the reading format or downloading HIP files and opening them up and exploring those, I would definitely recommend that.
But what if you're not like, HIP?
Well, then you're HIP LC. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I can't think of any other ones right now. I know there's other ones that I'm forgetting though, which is killing me.
There's a lot of great ones that'll kind of pop up on like CG Circuit, which is where like Applied Houdini is. But there's not like a full like series that I've taken I think on that website besides Steven's stuff. But there are like little shorter tutorials that have kind of popped up that have like piqued my interest there. But yeah, I feel like most people who also like either go through the course or whatever, and then they ask me like, what's the next step? I kind of say the same thing as Mark, where it's like, you go to Intagma or you go to Applied Houdini. Just because like after taking a lot of these courses, I feel like they do the best job to kind of, again, like explain these concepts, but in a pretty clear and concise way, whereas some of the other tutorials I've watched maybe get like kind of lost in the weeds a little bit. And I've noticed that like Side Effects has been putting out their own kind of tutorial series, and I've watched through a couple of those. So there's some pretty cool stuff just on Side Effects, like their homepage and their own website. Like they have a bunch of stuff that's, you know, just sections on RBD, sections on Vellum, sections on whatever part of Houdini you want to get into, and they also have like even like specific like Unreal pipeline stuff, which is super awesome to kind of see on there.
Yeah. Oh, also in the chat, Rich Nosworthy's course on Hello Lux. I grabbed a copy of that. I started going through it. It is awesome. I cannot wait to keep going. Yeah.
Is this a new one? Is it out, or is this an older one?
It just dropped.
Oh, it is out
like
now.
last week.
Probably Monday.
Or was it this week? Or this week? Yeah. It was like one of those like I'm gonna pick this up even if I don't know what I'm gonna learn out of this. It just looks super awesome.
Yeah. What is it about? Because I know, well, Rich Nosworthy took your course and finished it. Had some really great things to say about it. He was already kind of in Houdini before that, but what is his course on? Because I just saw the teaser. I never saw what it was actually about.
Oh, I mean, I haven't gotten that far into it, but from what I can tell by like looking over the syllabus, it's about like using kineffects and like Redshift instancing to create some really like realistic kind of plant growths and like scattering it in a way that makes it feel very abundant and very rich.
I'm about like maybe like I'm probably like a third through the class or so, maybe a half. But yeah, it's basically what like Mark's saying. But then he does dive into Vex a bit. But again, it's like one of those where he's doing the whole where he's talking about quaternions and like matrices, and basically like telling you or showing you how you can like align an object to like in this instance a piece of wood, like a photoscan piece of wood, and he's teaching you how to write these out in code. But then also he's explaining these like fundamentals to you. Like the lesson I just finished watching was just like this like 15-minute lesson talking about matrices, and just like talking about like, well, conceptually, what is this thing? Why do you need to understand it? And like, why does it do the thing you want it to do? And like it's been one of so like his class has for sure been one of those like I'm having a lot of those like kind of clicking moments, and partially it could be just because my experience is growing with Houdini, but like it's at the same line, it's like, well, now these like terminologies that he's like throwing out, I'm like, oh, I know what that is, and I can read back this like node flow, even though I'm like following his tutorial right now, but I can like at least read this node flow and just be like, okay, this is what this is functioning, this is what this is doing, and this is what this is doing. And I'm like, that to me is already a massive achievement, and I'm not just like blindly typing lines of code. It's like, well, this is doing something, but now I'm like, cool, this I can explain to someone else. This is what this node is doing, and this is why.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a super awesome course.
Rich had some great things to say. He said, some people asking about Stop Being Afraid of Houdini by Mark and Mograph.com. If you're new to Houdini and want to learn, this is hands down amazing. I wish I had this at the start. Of course, you'll probably need to watch it a few times to let it sink in. There's a lot it covers. I've been using Houdini for a few years, but even so, for me, it was worthwhile. A lot was going over things I learned, but there's also a lot of small things I'd missed from learning the scattered tutorials. It's aimed at beginners, but there's a lot of intermediate stuff too. It may not be for more advanced users, but for me, it was a perfect guide focusing lots on useful day-to-day concepts, workflow tips, and great revision of things I'd forgotten. If Steve Nipping Applied Houdini did a beginner's course, am I saying that right? Steve Nipping. Didn't you talk about him earlier or no?
Yeah.
Did a beginner's course. I think it would probably be like this. All in all, a top quality course with great instruction, and would recommend 100%. Hope Mark does a volume 2. Here you go. Everybody's waiting for it, man.
Yeah, I'm still kicking that one around. We'll have to see. I'm trying to figure out a way that I can. It's taking shape. Let's say.
Cool. And I did see. I did see this. I did see this thing he did. So this is from Rich's course then, because I saw this the other day on Twitter.
Yeah.
This is like a repost, I think, of a student who took his course.
Okay, I gotcha.
Yeah, because the product file one is just like a piece of driftwood that he photo scanned. And then so basically like in the class you're learning how to model those plants, animate each plant one by one, and then how to instance those on top of this branch or whatever. And then so I guess in that piece that student created, he just basically took the growth fundamentals and then just put it on his own geometry.
Well, look at this right here, Jeff. Jeff posted something that he learned in
There
the
it
course as
is.
well. There you go. See? So that's pretty. I wanted to Mark, you work for Already Been Chewed, but you do put out some stuff. You put out some tutorials from time to time, little Instagram here and there, and it sounds to me like, Barton. I kind of see some of y'all posting some stuff related to what you've been working on. I know it's kind of a hard thing to do when you're working with clients and you're working for someone and NDAs and all that kind of stuff, but you do put stuff out on your Instagram and other things. Where can people find you on the interwebs?
Yeah, I like to post most like finished artwork stuff on Instagram. So that would be like Mark Fancher FX. So my name with FX at the end of it is my Instagram handle. And then on Twitter, I like to do more like the BTS kind of like, my like kind of personal like, experimentations or mini tutorials or links to sort of like tutorials that I do. You can find me at feedback55. So a completely different word than my actual name. That's feedback, all one word with 2 5s after it.
And Alex, what about you? Are you on the grams and things?
Yeah, I'm not. My names aren't nearly as snazzy as Mark's. Mine are just purely my name, just Alex Liou. The only one that's different is Instagram. Got an underscore in between my first and last name, and that's because someone has got the other one and they won't let it go. Every time I try to switch my name, they're like, I know, it's probably because I've tried to look up the account. Doesn't exist.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny. I'm reading the comments on Jeff's post there, and Crossfader. He says, one course at a time. I'm working through the Mograph one first, then I'll get to this course for sure. If there's any other questions at this time, put them in now, or forever hold your peace. The question that I did miss was Kansas. She had actually asked you, I think in a Discord or somewhere, about do you have to have a math mind? I did want to address that real quick before we leave. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like you have to have a math mind to do this? Obviously there's going to be some math, but I'm not a big math-minded person. I'm not a programmer. How do you feel in that area?
So what I guess what I said to Kenzo was that like I used to have a math mind. I would say that knowledge has faded to the wayside. Like once high school ended, when I stopped having to implement math things. So for me personally, like like you were saying, like there's for sure like math things you need to know, and like it does help out to have those kind of understandings of like what certain like functions do, why like just like absolute value things, like certain things like that, where you just like you need to know what it does. But I feel like besides that, like at the end of the day, you're just writing those like lines of code, and then it's Houdini that's really calculating the math underneath the scene. So it's like it helps, but I don't think you necessarily need to be like a math whiz to get in there.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's kind of my viewpoint on it. I don't know about Mark.
Yeah, I definitely have a math mind. Unfortunately, I'm just not like the smartest person though. So it's like I like gravitate towards math and physics and stuff like that, but I'm not like super like on top of it all. I kind of everything's a little fuzzy to me, but I'm passionate about it, and I find like Houdini is a fun way for me to kind of explore that part of myself. My background, like when I went to school for physics in college, and so completely wound up in a major that actually relies pretty heavily on physics.
Yeah.
As a job after school, but not the type of job that you would think someone who's taking physics in college would actually go into. But yeah, I find that motion and graphs and stuff, they really speak to me, and I do like to code, but you don't need to code to be able to use Houdini. It's just the way I like to use it.
Yeah. Well, for anybody who wants to check it out or get some of the samples or what have you, if you go to mograph.com/classes, that's kind of the hub where you can get into everything. You can check it out. You can click and you can go to more info, and you can find all the videos that we were talking about on here earlier. So check that out. And if you want to contact Mark or Alex, just hit them up on the interwebs, or if you're in our Slack channel, hit us up there. I think that's about it. I think that's about it. I think we're going to get out of here. Make sure you check it out. We're going to play out with the promo video again, just because I think it's awesome looking, all that work you put into it. And thanks again, y'all, for being on and staying up with us late and chatting about nerd stuff on the internet. Hopefully some people got some useful information out of it, and were at least entertained a little bit, by dad jokes and such. But we're gonna get out of here. Rate us on iTunes and join our discussion. Every Monday we do a podcast. Matt and I do a podcast, and we talk about all sorts of motion graphic-y stuff, and we have guests on, and we talk about tech stuff and art stuff and NFTs, and joke around and have dog puppets on the show every once in a while. And so join us there if you're new, and there'll be lots more Houdini stuff hopefully coming down the pipe. And stop being afraid of Houdini. It's time. 'Tis time. Thanks, y'all, for being on.
The time has come.
Yeah. All right. Well, y'all have a good night, and thanks for being on.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
I'm going to start this whole thing off with 3 bold words. Houdini is easy. I am here to tell you that you are in the right place. Stay tuned. Do some particle simulations, some fluid simulations, just all the simulations. Let's just run this again. For all of you who are like me, who love computers and graphics and animation, you got this! An introduction to Houdini for motion designers and Cinema 4D artists looking to expand their skills. My apologies for the lame recording. I'm making this up as I go. You really do need to know what this stuff is to do the cool things. Sooner or later, your brain is going to start making connections. You came, you conquered, you saw. And congratulations for making it this far. Why didn't I know this existed? Cheers. I'm proud of you. I'm a little bit emotional now, I'm not gonna lie. Stop being afraid of Houdini! Without further ado, let's let the learning begin.